Millionaire CEO sees his ex-wife begging to feed two little twin girls and changes her life forever. Drop your location in the comments. I love knowing where my viewers are from. Let's get into the story. Ryan Mitchell swirled the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler, staring absently at the panoramic view of New York City from the exclusive restaurant on the 52nd floor. The twinkling lights below seemed to mock him, each one representing a life with purpose and connection, while he sat alone at a table meant for two. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Mitchell?" the waiter asked, hovering respectfully. "No, that's all," Ryan replied, not bothering to look up. The waiter nodded and retreated, leaving Ryan to his solitude, a state he had grown accustomed to over the past 6 years. At 38, he had built Mitchell Innovations into a technological empire that spanned 3 continents. His net worth exceeded $8 billion. By all measurable standards, Ryan Mitchell had succeeded beyond imagination. Yet, as he sipped his 30-year-old scotch, he felt the familiar emptiness spreading through his chest, the same hollow feeling that greeted him each morning in his penthouse and followed him to his corner office with its imposing mahogany desk. His phone buzzed. Another message from David, his business partner and oldest friend. Singapore deal locked. 8 figures. Celebrate, brother. Ryan didn't reply. Another deal, another million. The numbers had lost their meaning years ago. His mind drifted, as it often did in these quiet moments, to Eliza, her smile, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, how she would run her fingers through his hair when he was stressed. 6 years since their divorce, and still, the wound felt fresh. "You've chosen your path, Ryan," she had said that final day. "Your company will always come first." He had let her walk away, convinced that his vision for Mitchell Innovations was worth the sacrifice. Now, surrounded by everything money could buy, he wondered if it had been the greatest mistake of his life. A commotion outside the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows caught his attention. On the street below, a small crowd had gathered. From his elevated position, Ryan could see a woman with a cardboard sign, her shoulders hunched against the cold autumn wind. Something about her posture, the tilt of her head, seemed hauntingly familiar. Curious, Ryan moved closer to the window, squinting to see better in the dimming evening light. The woman turned slightly, and his heart stopped. Eliza, his ex-wife, was on the street corner, asking for money. Her once lustrous brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her clothes worn but clean. But what truly froze Ryan in place wasn't Eliza's presence. It was the 2 small girls clustered around her, no more than 5 years old, identical in every way, identical to him. 2 perfect miniature versions of Ryan himself, with his sharp jawline and penetrating brown eyes. 2 children who could only have been born after their divorce, yet bore his unmistakable features. The tumbler slipped from Ryan's hand, shattering on the polished floor. He barely noticed the commotion as waiters rushed to clean up the mess. His eyes remained fixed on the street below, on Eliza and the 2 girls, his daughters, the daughters he never knew existed. Ryan abandoned his half-eaten dinner, leaving a $100 bill on the table as he rushed toward the elevator. His heart hammered against his ribs. The image of those 2 identical faces burned into his mind. "Sir, your coat," a waiter called after him, but Ryan was already gone. The descent from the 52nd floor felt eternal. Ryan loosened his tie, struggling to breathe as questions flooded his mind. How could Eliza have hidden this from him? 2 children, his children, living on the streets while he accumulated billions. When the elevator doors finally opened, Ryan sprinted through the lobby and out into the crisp October evening. He scanned the street frantically, terrified she might have disappeared. Then he spotted them half a block away, Eliza kneeling beside one of the girls, adjusting her worn jacket. "Eliza!" Ryan called, his voice breaking. She froze, her body tensing visibly before she slowly turned to face him. When their eyes met, Ryan saw a flurry of emotions cross her face, shock, fear, and something that looked like resignation. "Ryan," she whispered, instinctively drawing the girls closer to her. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. Two perfect miniature versions of himself looked up at him with curious brown eyes. One of them, slightly taller than the other, stepped forward, her small chin raised in a protective gesture Ryan recognized from his own childhood. "Are you okay, Mommy?" the girl asked, her eyes never leaving Ryan. "Yes, Hannah," Eliza replied softly. "This is an old friend." Ryan couldn't tear his eyes away from the children. "They're mine," he said. It wasn't a question. Eliza's expression hardened. "We should talk somewhere else." "How old are they?" Ryan demanded, unable to contain himself. 5, she answered, her voice barely audible. 5 years. The math wasn't difficult. Eliza must have been pregnant when they divorced, when he had signed the papers without a second thought, eager to focus on expanding Mitchell Innovations. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked with emotion. "Mommy, I'm hungry," the smaller girl said, tugging at Eliza's coat. The simple statement hit Ryan like a physical blow. His daughters were hungry while he dined on Wagyu beef and expensive scotch. "Come with me," he said, his voice softer than intended. "All of you, please." Eliza hesitated, uncertainty written across her features. Ryan saw pride warring with practicality in her eyes. "Just dinner," he added. "And then we'll talk." After what felt like an eternity, Eliza nodded. "Okay," she said, gathering the girls closer. "Just dinner." As Ryan hailed a taxi, the quiet twin, not Hannah, but the other one, looked up at him with wide eyes. "You look like us," the girl said simply. Ryan's throat tightened as he met the child's gaze. "Yes," he managed to reply. "I suppose I do." Ryan led Eliza and the twins to a small family restaurant 2 blocks away. He had instinctively started toward his usual high-end establishment before catching Eliza's warning glance and redirecting to somewhere more appropriate. Now, seated in a corner booth with worn vinyl seats, Ryan could barely focus on the menu in his hands. The 2 girls, Hannah and Grace, as he learned, sat across from him, devouring plates of spaghetti with the enthusiasm only hungry children could muster. Eliza sat beside them, barely touching her own food, her eyes constantly darting between Ryan and her daughters. "They're good eaters," Ryan said awkwardly, searching for anything to break the tension. Eliza's lips twitched into a small smile despite herself. "They're growing girls." Hannah, the protective one, kept watching Ryan suspiciously while methodically twirling pasta around her fork. Grace, whom Ryan was learning was the curious one, studied Ryan's expensive watch with obvious fascination. "Why do you look like us?" Grace finally asked, her small voice cutting through the strained silence. Eliza stiffened. "Grace, remember what we talked about asking personal questions?" Ryan leaned forward slightly. "It's okay," he said gently. "Sometimes people look alike by coincidence." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue, but Eliza's grateful glance told him it was the right move for now. "Girls," Eliza suddenly said, "would you like ice cream for dessert?" The question successfully diverted the children's attention, and soon the waitress was taking their enthusiastic orders. When she left, Eliza turned to Ryan. 5 minutes, she whispered. "I'll take them to see the fish tank by the entrance. That should give us time to talk." True to her word, after the ice cream arrived and was quickly devoured, Eliza guided the twins to the large aquarium at the front of the restaurant. Ryan watched them go, his heart clenching at the sight of his daughters pressing their small hands against the glass, pointing excitedly at colorful fish. Eliza slipped back into the booth, her expression guarded. "Ask what you need to ask. When did you find out you were pregnant?" Ryan began, his voice low. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. "And you didn't think I deserved to know?" Eliza's eyes flashed. "You made it abundantly clear what your priorities were, Ryan. The day we signed those papers, you were on the phone closing a deal before the ink was dry. That doesn't justify keeping my children from me," he countered, struggling to keep his voice down. I called your office, Eliza said, surprising him. 3 times. Your assistant said you were too busy to take personal calls. After the 3rd time, I decided our children wouldn't spend their lives being too personal for your schedule. Chapter 3, First Steps. Ryan felt as if he'd been punched. He remembered his old assistant, the one who protected his time zealously during the company's expansion phase. I never got those messages, he said quietly. Eliza's expression softened slightly. Would it have mattered? You were building an empire, Ryan. That was always your dream, not a family. You don't know what I would have chosen, Ryan said, his voice rough with emotion. Don't I? She sighed, glancing at the girls. When I found out they were twins, I was terrified. I knew I'd need help, support, but I also knew what it would mean to tell you. You'd either reject us completely or try to control everything the way you always did with the business. Ryan wanted to deny it but couldn't. Control was his safety net, his way of ensuring success. They're my daughters, Eliza. I've lost 5 years with them. And whose fault is that? She shot back, then immediately closed her eyes, regaining composure. I'm sorry. That wasn't fair. Ryan looked at the 2 small girls, still fascinated by the tropical fish. What are their names? Tell me about them. For the first time, Eliza's expression warmed. Hannah is the oldest by 2 minutes. She's my little protector. She smiled fondly. Grace is the curious one, always asking why about everything. I want to know them, Ryan said firmly. Both of them. I want to be their father. Eliza studied him. This isn't about writing checks, Ryan. Being a father means showing up day after day. I know, he said, and I will. Before Eliza could respond, the girls rushed back to the table, full of excitement about a puffer fish they'd spotted. We should go, Eliza said, gathering her worn purse. It's past their bedtime. Tomorrow, Ryan said quickly. Central Park by the Bethesda Fountain, 2. Please, Eliza. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. We'll see. As they left, Grace turned back, her brown eyes so like Ryan's own, fixing on him with uncanny perception. Bye, the girl said softly, raising a small hand in farewell. Goodbye, Grace, Ryan replied, his voice thick with emotion. I'll see you tomorrow. Ryan arrived at Bethesda Fountain an hour early, pacing nervously around the iconic Central Park landmark. He had barely slept, his mind racing with images of 2 identical girls who shared his DNA. During the night, he'd researched everything he could about raising children, about twins specifically, about how to connect with kids who didn't know you were their father. The morning had been a flurry of activity. He'd cancelled 3 meetings, ignoring David's increasingly irate messages. For the first time in his adult life, Ryan Mitchell had put business second. When 2 o'clock approached, Ryan found himself holding his breath, scanning every path for Eliza and the girls. What if she didn't come? What if she changed her mind? The thought sent a wave of panic through him. Then he saw them, 3 figures approaching from the east path. Eliza looked different in daylight, her brown hair catching golden highlights from the sun. She wore simple jeans and a faded sweater but carried herself with the same quiet dignity he remembered. The girls bounded ahead of her, matching pink jackets making them look like a small coordinated team. You came, Ryan breathed when they reached him. Eliza nodded, a tentative smile touching her lips. I promised we would. The girls stared up at him with varying expressions. Hannah stood slightly in front of Grace, her protective instinct on display. Grace bounced on her toes, clearly excited for whatever adventure the park might offer. Girls, Eliza said gently, this is Mr. Mitchell. He's going to spend some time with us today. You can call me Ryan, he offered, crouching down to their level. Are you rich? Grace asked bluntly. You have an expensive watch. Grace. Eliza admonished. But Ryan laughed. Yes, I am, he answered honestly. But that's not the most important thing about me. What is? Hannah asked, speaking directly to him for the first time. Ryan hesitated, caught off guard by the simple question. What was the most important thing about him? For years, he would have said his business acumen, his success. Now, looking at these two little faces, he knew the answer had changed forever. I'm still figuring that out, he admitted. Maybe you girls can help me. That seemed to satisfy them for the moment. Ryan stood, meeting Eliza's surprised gaze. He hadn't planned to be so candid, but something about these children made him want to be better, more authentic. What would you like to do today? He asked the group. Boats. Grace exclaimed immediately, pointing to the small rental rowboats on the lake. Carousel, Hannah countered. Ice cream. Grace suggested enthusiastically. The zoo has tigers, Hannah added, speaking directly to Ryan for the first time. Eliza looked apologetic. They rarely agree on anything. Then we'll do it all, Ryan decided. We have all afternoon. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. They rented a rowboat, Ryan's expensive suit getting splashed as he awkwardly maneuvered the oars while two excited girls pointed at ducks and nearly tipped them over twice. They rode the carousel, the girls choosing different animals while Ryan and Eliza stood side by side, watching. They seem happy, Ryan observed. Eliza nodded. They're resilient children. Things haven't been easy these past few years, but they find joy everywhere. What happened, Eliza? He asked quietly. Last I heard, you were working at that design firm. She kept her eyes on the children spinning by on painted horses. Life happened, Ryan. I was managing okay at first. My mother helped with the girls. Then she died in that car accident 3 years ago. Eliza's voice wavered slightly. Without her support, I couldn't keep up with childcare costs and work full-time. I lost my job, then our apartment. We've been staying in shelters, moving around. Ryan felt a stab of guilt so intense it nearly doubled him over. Why didn't you contact me then? Pride, she admitted. Anger, maybe, and fear that you'd take them from me. They're all I have. Before Ryan could respond, the carousel stopped, and the girls rushed back to them, cheeks flushed with excitement. Ice cream now. Grace reminded them, tugging at Ryan's hand. As they walked toward the ice cream vendor, Hannah unexpectedly slipped her small hand into Ryan's. The simple gesture sent a jolt through his entire body, connection, trust, the weight of a child's hand in his own. I like your tie, Hannah said matter-of-factly. Blue is my favorite color. Mine too, Ryan replied, his voice suddenly hoarse with emotion. Later that evening, Ryan sat in his office, staring blankly at spreadsheets that would normally command his full attention. The quarterly projections for Mitchell Innovations showed record growth, but the numbers swam before his eyes, replaced by images of two little girls with his face. A sharp knock interrupted his thoughts before the door swung open without waiting for a response. David Sullivan strode in, impeccably dressed as always, his expression a mixture of concern and irritation. You missed the Singapore call, David said, dropping into the chair across from Ryan's desk. Lee was asking for you specifically. I had to make excuses. Something came up, Ryan replied vaguely. David narrowed his eyes. Something more important than the 8-figure deal we've been chasing for months? Yes. The simple answer clearly caught David off guard. Are you sick? David asked, genuine concern briefly displacing his irritation. Ryan leaned back, suddenly exhausted by the prospect of explaining. But David wasn't just his business partner, he was his oldest friend. He deserved to know. I saw Eliza yesterday, Ryan said finally. David's expression darkened immediately. Your ex. What did she want after all these years? Money, I assume. She didn't want anything. I saw her by chance. Ryan paused, then added quietly, she has children. 2 of them. Girls. David shrugged. Good for her. She remarried. No. Ryan met his friend's gaze directly. They're 5 years old, identical twins. They look exactly like me at that age. The implication hung in the air between them. David's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something harder. That's impossible, he finally said. She would have told you. She tried, Ryan corrected him. Apparently, 3 times my assistant blocked the calls. David stood abruptly, pacing the office. Even if they are yours, and that's a big if, where has she been for 5 years? Why show up now? His eyes narrowed. Think about it, Ryan. We just closed the Mercer acquisition. Your net worth jumped $2 billion overnight. The timing is suspicious. She didn't show up, Ryan corrected him again. I saw her on the street. She was asking for money. They've been struggling. David let out a humorless laugh. Of course, she was. This is textbook, Ryan. She hides these kids for years, waits until you're at your wealthiest, then conveniently falls on hard times. It's not like that, Ryan insisted, an unfamiliar anger rising in his chest. You didn't see them, David. They're living in shelters. Eliza lost her job. Her mother died. And you're falling for it, David interrupted, his voice sharp. 5 minutes with her, and you're already making excuses. You've always had a blind spot when it comes to Eliza. Ryan stood, matching his friend's stance. They're my daughters. You don't know that. David's expression hardened. Get a DNA test. If they're really yours, we'll handle it properly. Set up trust funds, arrange appropriate support. He leaned forward, hands braced on the desk. But don't let her manipulate you into thinking you can play happy family after 6 years. The words stung because they touched Ryan's deepest fear, that he had lost too much time, that he couldn't repair what had been broken. I'm seeing them again tomorrow, he said firmly. I promised. David straightened, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. Fine, do what you need to do, but keep your head on straight. Remember everything we've built. He moved toward the door, then paused. And get that DNA test. After David left, Ryan sank back into his chair, conflict churning inside him. His friend's warnings weren't entirely unreasonable. The business side of Ryan, the side that had built an empire on calculated risk and strategic thinking, knew he should proceed cautiously. But another part of him, a part long suppressed by ambition and the pursuit of success, rejected the cold analysis. He had held Hannah's small hand, had witnessed Grace's unbridled enthusiasm. He had felt a connection that transcended logic or business strategy. Ryan picked up his phone and called Eliza's number, which she had reluctantly shared at the park. Is tomorrow still good? He asked when she answered. I thought maybe we could go to the Children's Museum. The girls might enjoy it. There was a pause before Eliza replied, her voice cautious but not unwelcoming. They'd love that. They've never been. I'll send a car, Ryan offered, then caught himself. Or I could meet you there. Whatever you prefer. We'll meet you there, Eliza said firmly. 10 o'clock. Perfect. As Ryan hung up, he noticed a text from David, called our lawyer. Custody arrangements need to be airtight if confirmed. Don't promise anything yet. Ryan set the phone down without replying. For the first time in their shared business history, the friends were approaching a situation from completely different angles. David saw potential liabilities, legal complications, threats to the empire they'd built. Ryan just saw his daughters. The Children's Museum was awash with color, sound, and movement, a cacophony of childhood joy that would normally have overwhelmed Ryan Mitchell. Today, however, he barely noticed the chaos as he watched his daughters race from exhibit to exhibit with unbridled enthusiasm. "Look, Ryan, I'm making a tornado." Grace called from the weather station, her small hands manipulating air currents that swirled inside a tall tube. "That's impressive," Ryan replied, genuinely amazed at how quickly the girls had warmed to him. He had expected resistance, especially from protective Hannah. But children, he was learning, possessed a remarkable capacity for acceptance. Eliza stood nearby, arms crossed, but with a softness to her expression that hadn't been there during their first encounters. "They've never had anyone else show interest in the things they love," she explained quietly. "Their teachers are too overwhelmed with full classrooms, and we don't have extended family." Ryan felt a familiar pang of guilt. "They should have had me." "Yes," Eliza agreed simply, without accusation. "They should have." Hannah appeared suddenly, tugging at Ryan's sleeve. "The robot exhibit is opening. Can we go, please?" Of course, Ryan nodded, surprised at how natural it felt to be consulted on such decisions. As they made their way through the museum, Ryan found himself cataloging each girl's distinct personality. Hannah approached every exhibit methodically, reading instructions before engaging. Grace dove in head first, all imagination and instinct. "You have the same frown," Hannah commented as they examined a display of simple machines. "What do you mean?" Ryan asked. "When you're thinking hard," Hannah demonstrated, furrowing her brow in perfect imitation of Ryan's expression. "Like this. Mommy says I look serious, like a little old man." Ryan laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even him. "My father used to say the same thing about me." "Your father?" Hannah's eyes widened. "You have a father?" The innocent question struck Ryan silent for a moment. Of course, in Hannah's world, fathers were abstract concepts, people other children had, not her and Grace. "I did," Ryan recovered. "He died when I was in college, about your age, though I looked just like you." Hannah seemed to consider this carefully. "Was he nice?" Ryan hesitated. Thomas Mitchell had been many things. Driven, ambitious, demanding. But nice was rarely a word associated with him. He had pushed Ryan relentlessly, instilling in him the cutthroat business instincts that later built his empire. "He taught me a lot," Ryan answered diplomatically. But he looked around at the girls, engaged and happy, and added, "I think I'd like to be a different kind of father than he was." Before Hannah could follow up with another disarmingly perceptive question, Grace appeared, face flushed with excitement. "They have a space lab upstairs. Can we go to space, Ryan, please?" That evening, as Ryan entered his penthouse, his phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. "The DNA test results are in," David said without preamble. "I had our security team collect samples from the restaurant, straws, napkins. It wasn't hard." Ryan's hand tightened around the phone. "You did what?" "I'm protecting you," David replied, unapologetic. "And I was right, too. The results are on your desk. You'll want to see them before you go any further with this little family fantasy." Ryan stared at the envelope on his desk, his name printed in the sterile font of the laboratory David had used. His fingers trembled slightly as he picked it up. Part of him wanted to tear it open immediately. Another part wanted to throw it away unopened. He didn't need science to tell him what his heart already knew. Still, the businessman in him, the pragmatist his father had shaped, knew that verification mattered. Ryan tore open the envelope and scanned the results, 99.9% probability of paternity. He set the paper down, emotions warring within him, relief that there could be no more doubt, anger at David's underhanded tactics, and a profound sense of responsibility that settled over him like a physical weight. His phone buzzed with a text from Eliza, "Girls have a school performance tomorrow, 1 p.m. at Riverside Elementary. They asked if you might come." Ryan immediately typed back, I'll be there. He had barely set down his phone when it rang. David again. Did you see the results? David asked. Yes, Ryan replied. They confirm what I already knew. Great. Now we can handle this properly. I've had legal draft child support agreements. I'm going to their school performance tomorrow, Ryan interrupted. Silence hung on the line for a moment. Ryan, we have the Solex presentation tomorrow at 1 o'clock. The entire board will be there. We've been preparing for months. You'll handle it brilliantly, Ryan said with finality. You know the material as well as I do. This is exactly what I was afraid of, David replied, his voice tight. She's already got you rearranging your entire life after what, a week. These kids have survived 5 years without you. They can wait one more day. But I can't wait one more day without them, Ryan said quietly. That's what you don't understand. He ended the call before David could respond. Riverside Elementary was a far cry from the private academies Ryan had always imagined his children would attend. The building was old but well maintained, the auditorium filled with folding chairs and hand-painted backdrops. Ryan felt distinctly out of place in his tailored suit among the casually dressed parents, many of whom had clearly rushed from hourly jobs to attend. He spotted Eliza in the third row and made his way toward her, aware of curious glances following him. You came, she said, surprise evident in her voice. I promised I would, he replied simply, taking the seat she'd saved. The performance was a simple adaptation of The Giving Tree, with each class playing different parts. The twins' kindergarten class portrayed the tree in its various stages. Hannah, solemn and focused, played the tree as an adult, while Grace, animated and expressive, was the tree in its youth. Ryan found himself unexpectedly moved by the story of sacrifice and unconditional love, seeing it with fresh eyes through the lens of his newfound fatherhood. When the children took their final bow, he rose to his feet, applauding with unexpected enthusiasm. They were wonderful, he told Eliza, his voice thick with emotion. They worked so hard on their lines, she replied, her own eyes suspiciously bright. As the audience dispersed, the twins spotted them and rushed over, still in their tree costumes. Did you see us? Grace asked excitedly. I was the happy tree, and I was the grown-up tree, Hannah added, more reserved but clearly seeking approval. You were both amazing, Ryan said, kneeling to their level. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. As he spoke those words, Ryan realized with perfect clarity that they were true. At that exact moment across town, David was likely explaining his absence to disappointed board members and investors. For the first time in his adult life, Ryan Mitchell had chosen something over Mitchell Innovations, and he didn't regret it for a second. Ryan stood in his office, staring at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Solex presentation had gone forward without him, and as predicted, David had handled it flawlessly. But the tension between them had escalated to unprecedented levels. 3 missed calls from his business partner flashed on Ryan's phone, but he wasn't ready for that conversation yet. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His current assistant, Jessica, entered with a hesitant expression. Mr. Mitchell, I have some information you requested about your previous assistant, Margaret Welling, she reported. She worked here for 18 months during your divorce and the company's international expansion. She left for a position at Davenport Industries in 2018. And my call logs from that period? Jessica handed him a folder. All the records we could retrieve. I've highlighted calls from Miss Bennett's number. Ryan scanned the pages, his jaw tightening. 3 calls, exactly as Eliza had described, all marked personal, no message taken. And a 4th call he hadn't known about, with a note in Margaret's handwriting, E.B. Re, Preg, not forwarded per directive on personal matters. Thank you, Jessica, Ryan said, his voice strained. That will be all. After she left, Ryan sank into his chair, the evidence of deliberate obstruction clear before him. Margaret had been following his standing order to shield him from personal distractions during the critical expansion phase, but she had overstepped catastrophically. His direct line rang. David again. This time, Ryan answered. The board wants answers, David said without preamble. So do I. The girls are mine, Ryan replied. Your test confirmed it. That's not what I'm asking. You missed a pivotal presentation for a school play, Ryan. What's next? Abandoning the Tokyo merger for a soccer game? Putting a multinational corporation on hold for a ballet recital? If necessary, Ryan said with a calm that surprised even himself. David's exasperation was palpable, even through the phone. What's happened to you? 1 week with these kids, and you're throwing away everything we've built. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm gaining something I didn't know I needed. Ryan paused. David, I just found out my previous assistant deliberately kept Eliza's pregnancy from me. I lost 5 years with my daughters because I was too focused on this company. I won't lose another day. So, what exactly are you planning? David asked, his voice wary. I'm going to tell them I'm their father tonight. Silence hung between them for a long moment before David spoke again. And if they reject you, if they're confused or angry? Children aren't corporate acquisitions, Ryan. You can't just decide to take ownership and expect immediate returns. The words stung because they contained a grain of truth. Ryan had been moving fast, propelled by his need to make up for lost time. I know the risks, he finally said, but they deserve the truth, and I deserve the chance to be their father, whatever that means to them. After ending the call, Ryan texted Eliza, we need to talk without the girls first. Can I come by this evening? Her response came quickly, they'll be asleep by 8:30. Come at 9 o'clock. Ryan took a deep breath, preparing himself for what would be the most important conversation of his life. The small apartment was quiet when Ryan arrived. Eliza met him at the door, finger to her lips, and led him to a tiny kitchen table. 2 mugs of tea waited, steam rising in the dim light. They just fell asleep, she whispered. They were exhausted from the performance. Ryan nodded, glancing toward the partially open door where he could just make out 2 small beds. Thank you for seeing me. You said we needed to talk. Eliza's voice was guarded as she sat across from him. I want to tell them I'm their father. Tomorrow, if possible. Eliza didn't look surprised. She cradled her mug between her hands, studying him. Why now? Why not wait a few more weeks until they know you better? Because every day I'm not their father is another day lost, Ryan replied. And because I don't want to build our relationship on a lie. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. They might not understand. They might be confused, angry even. Are you prepared for that? Yes, Ryan said, though uncertainty flickered through him. Are you opposed to telling them? She shook her head slowly. No, they've been asking more questions about you lately. Hannah asked yesterday if you were someone special to us because you look like them. A small smile touched her lips. They're observant, like their mother. Ryan said softly, their eyes met briefly before Eliza looked away. If we do this, we need to be united. We need to have answers ready for their questions. Agreed, Ryan nodded. They'll want to know why I wasn't there before, why I'm here now. Ryan nodded, the familiar weight of guilt settling over him. I'll tell them the truth, that I didn't know about them, but now that I do, I want to be part of their lives forever. Forever is a big promise, Ryan, Eliza cautioned. Children take it literally. So do I, he replied firmly. I'm not going anywhere, Eliza. Whatever it takes, whatever I need to change, I'm all in. Something in his tone must have convinced her because she nodded. Sunday. We'll tell them Sunday in the park where they feel comfortable, you and I together. Ryan felt a wave of relief and anxiety wash over him. Thank you. As he prepared to leave, Eliza walked him to the door. "Ryan," she said hesitantly, "what about your company, David? I know how important Mitchell Innovations is to you." "It's still important," Ryan admitted. "But it's not everything anymore." He paused, then added quietly, "I found out my assistant blocked your calls. All of them. Even the one where you specifically mentioned the pregnancy." Eliza's expression softened with surprise. "You didn't know?" "I didn't know," he confirmed. "I'm sorry, Eliza. So sorry you had to do this alone." As he turned to go, he heard a small sound from the girl's room. Hannah stood in the doorway, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, watching them with solemn eyes. "Hannah," Eliza said gently, "you should be sleeping, sweetie." "I heard talking," the girl explained, her gaze fixed on Ryan. "Are you leaving?" Ryan knelt to her level. "Yes, but I'll see you on Sunday. We're going to the park." Hannah studied him with that penetrating gaze that seemed too mature for her 5 years. "Promise?" "I promise," Ryan said solemnly. Hannah nodded, apparently satisfied, then surprised both adults by walking over and giving Ryan a quick hug before retreating to her room. Eliza and Ryan exchanged stunned looks. "Well," Eliza said softly, "that's new." Sunday dawned bright and clear, the autumn sun casting a golden glow over Central Park's changing leaves. Ryan arrived early at their designated meeting spot, a bench near the children's playground. His stomach was knotted with anticipation and fear that the girls might reject him, that this revelation would disrupt the delicate bond they had begun to form. He checked his phone, surprised to see 3 missed calls from David. They hadn't spoken since their confrontation over the Solex presentation. Ryan hesitated, then called back, figuring it was better to handle whatever business crisis had arisen before Eliza and the girls arrived. "About time," David answered briskly. "We need to talk." "Can it wait?" "I'm about to." "It's about Eliza," David interrupted. "Our legal team found something you need to see before you make any decisions." Ryan's grip on the phone tightened. "What are you talking about?" "She's filed for full legal custody, Ryan, and child support. Substantial child support. The paperwork was submitted to family court 2 days ago." "That's impossible," Ryan said, his voice dropping. "We're telling the girls I'm their father today, together. We've been planning it all week." "Then she's playing you," David replied, his tone frustratingly sympathetic. "I'm texting you the documents now. Our investigators obtained them directly from the court system. This isn't speculation." Ryan's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He opened it to find legal paperwork, Eliza's name clearly visible, requesting full legal custody of Hannah and Grace Mitchell with provisions for substantial financial support. "Ryan, are you still there?" David asked. "I'll call you back," Ryan said numbly, ending the call. He stared at the documents, feeling as though the ground had shifted beneath him. Was this why Eliza had finally agreed to tell the girls? Had everything, her warming to him, the girls' school performance, Hannah's unexpected hug, been calculated steps in a financial strategy? The businessman in him, the part trained to spot favorable negotiation setups, whispered that David was right. The timing, the sudden openness to co-parenting after years of secrecy, aligned perfectly with someone positioning for maximum financial gain. But another part of him, the part that had watched Eliza struggle to provide for their daughters, that had seen her fierce protectiveness and unwavering dignity even in hardship, couldn't reconcile this legal maneuver with the woman he thought he knew. "Ryan." Grace's voice cut through his thoughts. He looked up to see the twins running toward him, Eliza following more slowly behind. Ryan quickly pocketed his phone, forcing a smile as Grace barreled into him with her customary enthusiasm. Hannah approached more cautiously but offered a small smile that twisted his heart. "We brought bread for the ducks," Grace announced, holding up a paper bag. "And a ball," Hannah added more practically, "in case we want to play." "Excellent planning," Ryan said, impressed by their thoughtfulness despite the turmoil in his mind. Eliza reached them, her expression unreadable. "Good morning." Ryan studied her face, searching for signs of deception. "Morning. I thought we could talk first, then play." Eliza nodded, glancing at the girls. "There's a quiet spot by the pond." As they walked, Ryan fell into step beside her, the girls running ahead. "Is everything all right?" Eliza asked, noting his silence. Ryan hesitated, torn between confronting her immediately and waiting until after they had told the girls. "We need to talk privately after." Concern flickered across her face, but she nodded. They reached a secluded bench overlooking the pond. Eliza called the girls back, and they settled on either side of her, sensing the shift in mood. "Girls," Eliza began gently, "remember how you've asked me about your father? About why you don't have one like some of your friends do?" The twins nodded solemnly, their expressions so identical it still startled Ryan. "Everyone has a father," Eliza continued, "even if they don't always know them or live with them." "Like Zoe from school," Grace piped up. "Her dad lives in Florida." "That's right," Eliza nodded. "Sometimes parents live in different places but are still both important." She glanced at Ryan, a silent signal that it was his turn. Despite the turmoil of David's revelation, Ryan found himself moving forward, drawn by the expectant gazes of his daughters. He knelt before them, his heart pounding. "The truth is," he said softly, "you do have a father. You've always had one. He just didn't know about you until recently." The girls looked between Ryan and their mother, processing his words. Hannah's brow furrowed in that familiar expression that mirrored Ryan's own thinking face. "Your father and I made mistakes," Eliza added gently, placing a reassuring hand on Grace's shoulder. "Adult mistakes. But none of those mistakes change how much we both love you." Grace, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly looked directly at Ryan, her eyes widening with realization. "Is it you? Are you our daddy?" The simple question hung in the air. Ryan felt his throat tighten as he nodded. "Yes, Grace. I'm your father." Silence fell over the group as two identical faces processed this revelation. Ryan held his breath, terrified of rejection, of confusion too complicated for 5-year-olds to navigate. Hannah, logical as always, was the next to speak. "That's why we look like you." "Yes," Ryan confirmed. "That's why." Grace's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. She launched herself at Ryan, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I knew it," she exclaimed. "I told Hannah you had to be somebody special to us." Ryan hugged her back, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "You are the most important people in the world to me," he managed to say. Hannah remained apart, watching with conflicted eyes. "It's okay to need time, Hannah," Eliza said softly. "This is big news." The girl twisted her hands together, a gesture so like her mother's, and looked directly at Ryan. "If you're our dad, does that mean you're staying forever? Not just visiting?" Ryan held her gaze steadily. "Forever," he promised. "Nothing could keep me away now that I've found you." Hannah considered this, her 5-year-old face solemn with the weight of decision. Finally, she nodded once and moved forward, joining her sister in Ryan's embrace. Ryan closed his eyes, holding his daughters, both of them, for the first time as their father. The feeling was indescribable, a completion he hadn't known he was missing until this moment. When they finally broke apart, Grace immediately had questions. "Can we call you Daddy now?" she asked eagerly. "I'd like that very much," Ryan answered, his voice rough with emotion. "Do you have toys at your house?" Hannah inquired practically. Ryan laughed. "Not yet, but we can fix that." Eliza watched their exchange with glistening eyes, relief evident in her posture. Whatever she had feared, rejection, confusion, anger, hadn't materialized. Instead, their daughters had accepted the truth with the remarkable resilience of childhood. As promised, they spent the afternoon playing in the park, stopping for hot dogs from a vendor and ice cream cones that dripped sticky trails down small fingers. Through it all, Ryan found himself repeatedly pulled into the moment by cries of, "Daddy, watch this," or "Daddy, your turn." Each use of the word filled him with joy. Late in the afternoon, as the sun slanted through the trees, they finally packed up to leave, the girls exhausted but happy, buzzing with new possibilities. "Can we see Daddy's house?" Grace asked as they walked toward the park exit. Eliza and Ryan exchanged glances. Soon, Eliza promised. "We're taking things one step at a time." As the girls ran ahead, racing each other to the next lamppost, Ryan turned to Eliza, the legal documents weighing heavily in his mind. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Eliza nodded, her expression becoming guarded. "What's wrong?" Ryan took out his phone and pulled up the court filings David had sent. "Care to explain this?" Eliza's eyes widened as she scanned the documents. "Where did you get these?" "David has been monitoring the family court filings. These were submitted 2 days ago." She looked up at him, her face pale. "Ryan, I never filed these. I wouldn't do this. Not after everything we've discussed." Ryan studied her face, searching for signs of deception but finding only genuine shock. "Then who did?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But these aren't mine. Look at the address. That's not even my current address, and this signature." She pointed to the bottom of the page. "That's not how I sign my name." Ryan took a closer look. The signature bore only a passing resemblance to Eliza's handwriting, and the address listed was indeed her previous apartment, not the one she currently shared with the girls. "David," Ryan muttered, realization dawning. "He's trying to drive a wedge between us." "Why would he do that?" "Because he thinks you're a threat to the company, to everything we've built." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, anger building. "He's been warning me from the beginning not to get too involved, to keep things strictly financial." Ryan looked at his daughters, laughing as they chased each other in circles around a tree. The choice that had been building within him for weeks crystallized with perfect clarity. "Now I make him understand that some things are more important than business," Ryan said firmly. "Starting tomorrow, things are going to change at Mitchell Innovations." The morning sun streamed through the windows of Mitchell Innovations' executive floor as Ryan strode purposefully toward the boardroom. He had called an emergency meeting of the executive team, something unprecedented in the company's history outside of a crisis. David was already there, along with the chief financial officer and 3 other executives. Their expressions ranged from curious to concerned. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Ryan began, remaining standing at the head of the table. "Effective immediately, I'm restructuring my role at Mitchell Innovations." David's head snapped up, alarm crossing his features. "I'll be transitioning to chairman of the board, while David will assume the role of CEO," Ryan continued. "This change will allow our company to maintain its growth trajectory while I address some personal priorities." "What personal priorities could possibly warrant this?" David demanded, his voice tight with barely contained anger. Ryan met his friend's gaze steadily. "My daughters." The room fell silent. The other executives exchanged glances, clearly aware they were witnessing something significant but unsure of the context. "If you'll excuse us," Ryan said to the group, "David and I need to have a private conversation." After the others filed out, Ryan closed the door and turned to his oldest friend. "The custody documents were fake," he said without preamble. "You had them created to make me doubt Eliza." David's expression hardened. "I was protecting you and this company. By lying to me? By trying to sabotage my relationship with my children's mother?" "I did what was necessary," David insisted. "You weren't thinking clearly. You still aren't. Stepping down as CEO. Do you have any idea what that will do to shareholder confidence?" I'm not stepping down, Ryan clarified. I'm evolving my role to prioritize what matters. And David, he leaned forward, hands braced on the table, those little girls matter more than anything, including this company. You've known them for 3 weeks, David said incredulously. And I've lost 5 years already. I won't lose another day because of misplaced priorities. Ryan straightened. The restructuring happens this week. You can be part of it, or I can find someone else to lead. David stared at him, realization dawning that Ryan was entirely serious. You'd really walk away from everything we've built? I'm not walking away, Ryan replied. I'm building something even more important, a family. Chapter 13, New Normalcy. 6 months had passed since Ryan's restructuring of Mitchell Innovations. The transition had been smoother than anticipated, with David reluctantly but effectively stepping into the CEO role while Ryan maintained strategic oversight as chairman. The company's stock had initially dipped but quickly recovered when investors saw the continued growth under the new leadership structure. Today, Ryan stood in the backyard of his recently purchased Brooklyn brownstone, watching as Hannah and Grace chased each other through the sprinkler, their identical squeals of delight filling the warm spring air. He had moved from his Manhattan penthouse to be closer to the girls, just 3 blocks from Eliza's new apartment. "Daddy, watch this," Grace called, attempting a cartwheel that ended in a giggling tumble onto the grass. "Very impressive." Ryan applauded, marveling at how naturally the word "daddy" now flowed from both girls' lips. Eliza appeared beside him, carrying a tray of lemonade. "They've been asking about swimming lessons for the summer," she mentioned, setting the tray on the patio table. "I'll look into it," Ryan nodded, taking a glass. "How's the new project going?" Eliza's eyes lit up. "The client loved my presentation. They want me to redesign their entire corporate headquarters." The design firm that had rehired Eliza, with Ryan's recommendation, had quickly recognized her talent, promoting her twice in 6 months. She was flourishing professionally, regaining the confidence that hardship had temporarily dimmed. Their co-parenting relationship had evolved into a comfortable rhythm, weekday dinners at Eliza's, weekends often spent together at Ryan's, with the girls moving happily between both homes. They were a family, unconventional perhaps, but undeniably united in their love for Hannah and Grace. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught their attention. "Uncle David," the twins shouted in unison, abandoning the sprinkler to rush toward the gate. David Sullivan, dressed more casually than Ryan had seen him in years, emerged bearing what appeared to be science kits. "I promised Hannah we'd build a volcano today," David explained, accepting wet hugs from the girls with surprising good humor. "And Grace wants to make slime." Ryan exchanged an amused glance with Eliza. The most unexpected development of all had been David's transformation from skeptical antagonist to devoted uncle. After weeks of tension following the restructuring, David had grudgingly attended the twins' birthday party and found himself completely charmed. Now, watching his business partner high-five his daughters, Ryan realized they had all found a new normalcy, one built not on what they had lost or missed, but on what they had gained and created together. A midsummer storm raged outside as Ryan sat in his home office, reviewing the quarterly reports for Mitchell Innovations. Even with his reduced role, he maintained oversight of major strategic decisions. The company had not just survived his step back but had thrived under the new leadership structure, with David proving himself more than capable as CEO. The sound of small footsteps interrupted his concentration. Hannah appeared in the doorway, clutching her sketchbook, her expression troubled. "Daddy, can I talk to you?" "Of course, sweetheart," Ryan said, immediately setting aside his work. "What's on your mind?" Hannah climbed onto his lap, a gesture that still filled him with wonder even after months of fatherhood. She opened her sketchbook to reveal a family drawing, Ryan, Eliza, Grace, and herself standing in front of a house. "Mrs. Peterson asked us to draw our families," Hannah explained. "And Liam said mine wasn't a real family because you and Mommy don't live in the same house." Ryan felt a familiar protective anger rise but kept his voice gentle. Families come in all different shapes, Hannah. What matters is that we love each other. But why don't you and Mommy live together? Don't you like her anymore? The innocent question caught Ryan off guard. His relationship with Eliza had evolved from cautious co-parents to genuine friends, but they had carefully maintained boundaries, both uncertain about complicating their hard-won stability. Before Ryan could formulate a response, his phone rang with David's ringtone, their signal for urgent business matters. "I need to take this, sweetie," Ryan said reluctantly. "But we'll finish talking about this, I promise." Hannah nodded solemnly and slipped off his lap. The call confirmed what Ryan had been anticipating for weeks: a competitor was attempting a hostile takeover of their European division. David needed Ryan in London immediately to stabilize key relationships, a 3-week trip, minimum. As Ryan hung up, he found Hannah standing in the doorway again, her expression making it clear she'd heard enough to understand. "You're leaving?" she asked, her voice small. "Just for a little while," Ryan assured her. "Sometimes daddies have to travel for work. But you promised we'd go to the Science Museum next week, and Grace has her dance recital." Ryan felt the familiar tension between work and family pulling at him once again. This time, however, the choice seemed clearer than ever before. 7 years had passed since that fateful evening when Ryan Mitchell spotted his ex-wife and twin daughters begging on a New York street corner. Now, on a perfect summer morning, he stood in the backyard of his Brooklyn brownstone, watching as Hannah and Grace, now 12 years old, helped decorate for their birthday party. Though identical in appearance, the girls had developed distinct personalities that Ryan had come to treasure. Hannah, artistic and thoughtful, arranged flowers with precise care. Grace, scientifically minded and energetic, tested the structural integrity of the banner she'd created. "Looks like everything's under control out here," Eliza said, joining Ryan on the patio. She looked nothing like the desperate woman he'd encountered 7 years ago. Confidence radiated from her now, success evident in her bearing. As one of New York's most sought-after interior designers, she had reclaimed not just financial stability but professional fulfillment. Ryan smiled at her. "The girls have it all planned to the minute. Wonder where they got that organizational streak from," Eliza teased, nudging his shoulder gently. Their journey had been anything but simple. That night, 7 years ago, when business and family had collided with David's urgent London request, Ryan had made a decision that changed everything. Instead of flying to London alone, he proposed a family trip, combining the crucial business meetings with Hannah's Science Museum visit and Grace's recital, which they had arranged to have recorded. That trip had marked a turning point. Seeing how seamlessly Ryan integrated family and work responsibilities, David had finally understood what truly mattered. Upon their return, they had restructured the company further, implementing remote work policies and family-friendly practices that had ultimately made Mitchell Innovations more successful than ever. "Dad!" Grace called. "Uncle David's here with the science kits." David Sullivan entered the backyard, carrying several packages, a far cry from the hard-driving businessman who had once seen Ryan's daughters as threats to their empire. Now, he was a regular fixture in their lives, Uncle David, who brought the most educational gifts and had recently started mentoring Hannah in business principles after she'd expressed interest. As guests began to arrive, schoolmates, neighbors, colleagues, Ryan marveled at how full his life had become. The emptiness that had plagued him in that high-rise restaurant seemed like a distant memory. Late in the afternoon, as the party wound down, Ryan found himself standing beside Eliza, watching the girls open their final presents. "Remember that first day at the park?" he asked quietly. "When I promised Hannah I was staying forever?" Eliza nodded, her eyes warm with memory. "Best promise you ever kept." Their hands touched briefly, then interlaced, a gesture that had become increasingly common over the past year as their relationship evolved beyond co-parenting into something deeper. From across the yard, Hannah and Grace exchanged knowing glances, then wide smiles, as if their birthday wishes had somehow been granted. Ryan Mitchell had once measured success in billions. Now he measured it in moments, in Hannah's thoughtful questions, Grace's exuberant discoveries, and in Eliza's hand in his. He had found his home not in a Manhattan penthouse, but in the hearts of the family he had almost missed knowing. Some journeys begin with a single step. His had begun with a shattered glass and a second chance he never knew he needed.